Thanks, Mom. Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We took a little bit of a break because of life, but we're back. We're your host, Timmy Como Irby. And then
Auntie
we have,
Mina.
yay. So today, we are talking about the topic of being a stay at home mom. And I will defer to the expert here. Auntie Mina raised us along with my dad, and my dad was working, and she was a stay-at-home mom for much of our childhood. And so I wanted to just have a conversation about all that is. As we're doing that, since we're on this book club podcast, I do want to reference in the book the chapters that kind of talk about some of these topics. And so, chapter 8 is creating a marriage safe haven. And lesson number 26 in particular, which is on page 96, talks about making your home a shelter in the storm. So I just wanted to reference that, but I'm going to turn it over to Auntie Mina, the author, but also the person who was a stay at home mom. Um, I'm talking a lot, but I asked her specifically to talk about this topic because I have recently become a stay-at-home mom. My baby is 9 months old, her grandchild, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling. So, Auntie Mina, can you talk to us about your journey of stay-at-home mom life?
Okay, hello, welcome again. This is one of my favorite things to do, and especially this topic is close to my heart. Well, I don't know if you've ever heard my story. First of all, to get married in the first place, I was voted most likely to succeed, if you know what that means in Nigerian terms, because I was at the top of the class and my professor really thought I was going to become some big time professor. So when I got married, number one disappointment. He said, yeah, you put all this into woman and she goes off and gets married. Well, I got married and for years I didn't have children. And I love children. So when that didn't happen, I really felt like the world was over for me. But the Lord, in His faithfulness, gave us children later after I did everything I wanted to do, got quadruplets and lost them. So I said, God, it's all about you. You can give
Mm.
me children. And I promise, when you give me these children, I'm going to be the best mother so that when on that day I stand before you and you ask me, how did you take care of the people I gave you? I will receive a well done. So that was the premise I had, almost like an uh, promise to God. So when the kids started coming, I decided, first of all, when we went back to Nigeria, I was working and my husband was doing youth service and he was the one taking care of this. I'm like, this baby I longed for. Now I'm not here to take care of her. And then one of these days, my house help, I came back and she was so like anxious. And our neighbor said something happened. So what happened? He said, this say fell. And they knew how I valued my baby. So that made me, I said, well, I have to be here. I would be the one, their primary caregiver. And so we made a decision then for me to stay and be their primary caregiver. That was the start. And thank God my husband had a job, a good job. In fact, before the good job, we decided that we were going to manage. We kind of compare what would I say? Is it go get all the money and give the children everything they needed materially, or stay with them and give them the thing that will set them up in future? I'm not saying if you work in your children won't be ready for the future, but that was our premise. And so together, my husband and I decided we would raise our family on one salary, on his own salary. And my primary responsibility would be the children with the aim of raising them up physically, spiritually, emotionally, Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Wow. And I think it was really important for you to say at the beginning that you were voted most likely to succeed, because I think sometimes there's this weird misunderstanding about what leads a person into becoming a stay-at-home mom. And I think there's this wrong thinking that, oh, if you're staying at home, you didn't have anything else that you could be doing. And
Mm,
in the case of my mom, to brag on her a little bit, my mom is a former nurse. She has her MBA. She has all sorts of training and credentials, many of which she got while she was a stay at home mom. So we'll talk about that, using your time wisely. But it's not that you weren't educated or that you didn't have opportunities. You could have been doing many other things. But I think there's something really powerful about laying your ambition aside for a season and choosing to instead invest not in your career but in your children. um, I want to ask you, in your time, it's different now because we have LinkedIn now, so you can literally see the updates of all of your classmates and former coworkers getting promotions and moving into different parts of their career. How did you feel when it almost felt like your career was at a standstill? And you did you ever feel reduced? Did you feel self-conscious? How did you feel in those seasons?
well, I have to give credit to my husband because he knew. He called my brain fire brain. And he said, I cannot let this fire brain rot. And so when he went overseas, he got me the first computer I knew in my circle. I was the first to get a computer in the circle I had of friends I had then. It was a small box, 3.1 DOS prompt. And so that was we did not let my brain rot. So when I think of my friends, they are in a different zone. They were doing different, but I was developing my brain. And so when I was talking, my peers were not my peers. You don't understand what I'm saying? My mental, intellectual peers were not the same peers I had as a mother. So when I carry my babies to daycare and all of that, and I meet maybe a father that came to do, and he's in the tech industry. Hey, before you knew, we are talking about those from about, and they were like, "Who is this kind of woman? What kind of woman is she?" So I did not feel like that. The only way I felt was the money. My friends were
Mm,
getting money and buying things that I couldn't buy. And maybe it also helped that most of my friends were overseas.
mm,
So my core friends in Nigeria, which was where I raised most of the children, were not extravagantly buying things. And so I didn't have to compare how much they were buying and how much I couldn't buy.
mhm,
Besides, my husband was traveling overseas and buying me things. My children were getting dressed in foreign clothes. So I really didn't feel career envy. Maybe that's how
mhm,
I should put it. I didn't feel career envy. I felt a little
mhm,
bit financial envy, but God took care of it.
mm. I think that's a good point of that, like that visibility before, because it's not that they're out of sight, out of mind, but they're out of sight, so that constant reminder of that difference isn't really in your face as much. And I think maybe the millennial equivalent to that is like getting offline sometimes. Like,
Could be.
if you know that it's going to torture you to see everyone advancing, and it's not that you're not advancing. And I have to pause and say that because I really do feel, as a career coach, as a professional development coach, I think it's important to remember that, like, what is for you,
Mhm.
and God isn't keeping something from you, he's keeping something for you. So if you're not currently working, the advice that Auntie Mina gave of like, don't put your brain on a shelf to rot. You have to still figure out, what can I do to make sure I'm still developing and growing as a person, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Because, you're still a person, and although you're investing your time in your child, there's still a necessity to invest in yourself, so that you don't come to a standstill in your own progression. So I like that advice of like, don't have that comparison. And sometimes for a season, maybe not that you need to unfollow your friends, but maybe don't spend all your time trying to figure out,
Mhm.
what are they doing versus what I'm doing. Recently, I feel like LinkedIn's been used by the enemy. And LinkedIn's like, hey, by the way, you haven't posted any updates because I have none. Okay. I'm with my baby and I'm, just sitting, feeding my baby. And that was my accomplishment for the day. And so I think sometimes as a stay-at-home mom, you almost have to like divest yourself from all of these social networks that are trying to convince you to, make yourself seem like something that you're not. There might be a season where all you are is a stay-at-home mom, but I want to talk about that all you are part. Um, you mentioned the financial piece, so I'll come back to it. But then there's also this idea that like raising children is holy work. Can we talk about that for a little bit? It's holy work to raise children. Um,
Holy.
holy, like
Oh,
holy.
okay, okay, okay.
Yeah. So I think about this story I heard about how we never know the name of the person that led Billy Graham to Christ, but this person's played a small role in like his development. And so I think about that when I think about our children, that we don't know what they're going to become, but the Lord stewarded, let us be the stewards of their discipleship. He granted them to us. He put them in
Right.
our household, knowing that this man and this woman would raise this child unto the Lord. And
Mhm.
so
Amen.
sometimes when I feel like I have to pause, right? I have to time out because my mom gave you her perspective of she always wanted to be a mother and blah, 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 blah. Praise God. For me, oddly enough, I think a lot about my grandchildren, and I think about like, wow, one day they're gonna be like, Grandma Timmy did blah blah blah. But in order to get to my grandchildren, my child has to be raised in a way that will, do well. So I wasn't one of those women who was like, I can't wait to be a mother. I assumed that yes, it was gonna happen. Obviously, I get married and have a child. So I wasn't one of those who was like pining after motherhood. Motherhood just kind of snuck up on me. I was like, I'm a mom. I'm the one responsible. And so I have a little boy, and motherhood has been pleasantly delightful, and I really enjoyed it. Most of which is because of my mom. I had growing up, I had a really great mom that I could tell enjoyed motherhood. So I knew when I became a mom, I was like, I think I'm gonna have a good time. I just have to like get all the parts about like keeping your baby alive, feeding them, all of the responsible parts. Those are the parts that intimidated me. But the fun part, I was like, this will be great. So that's my background. But this idea that raising your children is holy work, that you're doing it as unto the Lord. Mom, can you talk about that? What is
Okay,
that feeling?
okay. So before I got the children, I knew that it was a vocation.
Hmm.
Like, it's a huge. I looked at teachers and I said, these teachers take care of her with your child for how many hours? And that's a whole chunk of the child's upbringing. And they are paid, they should be paid more. Somebody did an analysis. If mothers were paid what they were worth, it would be more than six figures income.
I
And
believe
so
it.
going into stay at home motherhood, I did not, I felt like I was doing work that would have rewards in future. And then there was something the spirit of the Lord, the way the Lord speaks to me, start with a question and then the answer. So one day I was taking a walk, he said, if how do you think Mary felt when she was raising Jesus? I said, oh man, raising Jesus, she will be like, so did you think he did not have some points where she would have said, hey, do this in different land? How would she do that? How did she do that? I said, oh, raising Jesus, I will be so careful. Say, now, what makes you, do you know what any of these children will become? They could become a governor, they could become principal, presidents. And would you want them to look back to their childhood and have
Hmm.
something you did? that affected them differently, negatively. I said, God forbid. Apart
Mm,
from the fact of getting a well done from God, I wanted my kids, just like Timmy said, I blush whenever they say they have a good mom. But I praise God for that because I said, God, I want to do everything to your. I would say I scored 100%, but I scored, God knew my heart.
mm,
I loved my children. And by extension, I love children everywhere. So I just know I was raising them for the Lord, number
mm,
one, but I was raising them for their future. For
mhm,
one thing, I didn't want a husband to say, who raised this woman with this guts? I care because my husband was grateful to my mother and father for raising me. Why would I do otherwise for my kids? I may not know, teach them everything. They will say, you didn't teach them how to cook. I said, well, look at the internet. They Google food and cook. So what would have happened? All the fight about cook. And then when we were in Nigeria, they said, oh, let the children swallow. And many parents, mothers
eat
will
fufu.
with their children to swallow. And I look at it, I say, what is in swallow and soup? Is it cultural or nutritional? So I got into arrangement with my children. They love to sip gari. Said you will sip the gari with sugar or whatever, and you lick the soup. Is that not the same thing? Gari and soup. Doesn't matter the way you ingest it. So anything that will cause us to fight and I make my children that I love so much become bitter and angry and all of that. And then me, I don't enjoy the motherhood. I said, no, there has to be a different way of achieving the same results without being so bitter and angry and upset, so that when the children will be wishing that you are no longer around, or whenever you travel, they are so happy. No, that wasn't my deal. So that's how I did it.
You bring up a good point, and I like that you said that because I think it's a balanced approach where you said you have to, and you as the mother have to be enjoying the motherhood too. Because I think sometimes you meet a camp of people who are like anything for the children, and it's this very like self-sacrificing thing, and you find yourself like always doing what the children want, and there's not any acknowledgement of what the parents' needs are. And I do think that that does breed a kind of resentment that happens in
Mm,
bitterness. And even as mature as you want to be, your children running your house doesn't make sense. But
mhm,
I think this idea of like, okay, you have to compromise certain things. Like, I have this really bad phrase that's like, oh, it's not drugs, right? Because sometimes if people want to do certain things and it's not exactly what I want to do, I have to remind myself, like, they want they want this thing. It's not drugs. It's not terrible. It's not what I want to do, but it's not
mm.
drugs. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to tell myself to not say no as much, because if I'm constantly saying, "Oh no, you can't," even my baby's 9 months old, and I'm already having to tell him like, "Can we make another choice?" And so I'm already telling him like, "Hey, that's a lot of curiosity. Let's take that curiosity elsewhere." I'm trying to not be like, "No, don't touch that." I'm like,
Mhm.
"Let's reroute all that." So
Right.
this is childhood for him, but it's also my adulthood. I'm
Exactly.
also living my 30s. I want to enjoy my son, and I want my son to enjoy me. I want his father to enjoy all of us. And so this idea of making it a safe haven for the child, but also for the parents who are husband and wife. It's
Mhm.
so easy to get lost in that child rearing that you don't look up and realize that, like, hey, your spouse has needs. So I'm going to reroute for a second and talking about this safe haven. I want to ask you, how would you advise a young wife who is trying to make marriage a safe haven for her children, but also for her husband? If she is a stay at home mom and wife, her husband is out there doing his job, and then he comes back home at the end of the day. I want to tell on myself quickly before you answer. When we first got married and had a baby, and I was freshly postpartum. My husband is a phenomenal cook, and he's a servant. He loves to serve, and he's so sweet. And at the beginning, He would come home from work when he finally got off paternity leave. He would come home from work and he would cook. He would cook for the whole family. And at some point, the Holy Spirit convicted me and was like, that's very wrong. His work was being at the job for like 8 hours, and he had that long commute. And then after that, he had to then think about what he was going to eat, and he had to make it himself. Timmy, please. And so I was like, okay, cooking is not my strong suit. I have a few recipes now that I can whip up, boom, boom, boom. But my husband loves cooking. So I was like, it's not a big deal. He enjoys it. But it wasn't right. And so even my mom was like, Timmy, don't do my dad was like, Timmy, don't do that. So I want to ask you, how does a woman balance that responsibility of, yes, you're responsible for the whole house while your husband is away, but then when he comes back home, now it's shared. How do you balance that?
Okay, well, again, I said I thank God for my husband. That gender role, if it's defined so strictly, there comes a problem. If a husband loves his wife and he comes home and she's tired, he sees that she's tired, and she could only offer him sandwich, or she was struggling to take care of the baby and prepare dinner. And he said, hey, babe, don't worry. I'll stop by and pick up something on the way. It's like balancing. I love you, you love me, I take care of you. Because at the end of the day, you are his wife, but you're also his mother, his children's mother. And the idea that you've been at home all day doing nothing is offensive,
Very,
because he's
yes.
not doing nothing. In fact, when I was watching Timmy earlier, she could not keep her eyes off away from Judah because he was everywhere. Now, the day I went to babysit, I said, wow, I got my workout for the day. So, and then you have one or two or three, you clean house, you cook. So it's not an easy task to stay at home. But like she said, it's not right for him to come back home. You didn't make any effort to cook. The house is in disarray. In fact, your own responsibility towards God it's like they say, I hate to quote Proverbs 31, but there's a nugget there that she does him good all his days.
Yeah.
Is he feeling that you are doing good, you're doing him well? Is there a difference between when he was single and now that he's married, or he's still doing everything, washing his own clothes, ironing his own clothes, and without you trying to help? That, like I said, thank God for my husband, because sometimes now I will be so tired. I will lay on the couch in the living room, and he's in the kitchen helping me clean out because he sees his wife tired. So there's a balance there. If the two are not talking, if there's a situation where the husband feels like that the wife should talk, they should have a talk. Say,
Hmm.
babe, I'm really tired.
Yeah.
Unless some women just come and they're on the phone all day and the baby is sleeping something. You know when you are not doing right.
No, it's true. And I like that you reminded us our responsibility to the Lord. And so it's not even necessarily, does that man deserve it? It doesn't even matter, like, oh, am I feeling it today? Like, no, when you're in covenant, you have to have those um, decisions that you make in your mind at the top of the day. No matter how today goes, I'm going to do well by my husband. But I also want us to talk practically so we can free ourselves. A friend of mine encouraged me. She's been married, I want to say 7 or 8 years. And I was just telling her that I'm a person before marriage that I have systems for things. I do things very systematically so that I can be free. But when it came to cooking, like Auntie Mina said, I was getting defeated every day because I would look up and it was 4 o'clock. And I was like, what did I do today? I chased this baby around the room. I changed his diaper. I fed him. He's fed. I just had a shower like an hour ago. And so I felt like my systems weren't quite working. And I was saying, like, even things like getting food on the table, I was getting so frustrated. And she was saying, like, aren't there things you can do? Like, you can meal prep as a community. Can't you get together with some girlfriends or with your mom and some other people and say, hey, today we're making rice, and everybody make rice, and you're making baking chicken, bake a lot of chicken, and then everyone packs it up. And so she was saying, some of these things we have in our minds that they have to be done a certain way, and we're making it harder for ourselves. And so just practical things like meal prep, freezer meals, or using an Instapot, you know or your air fryer, making meals ahead of time. And or even there are times where you can order out if it's that it's too much for both people. But I think the excuse of like, hey, I'm tired, I'm not going to do anything, as wives, we kind of have to like call ourselves into order, because there were times where I was just like, baby, I've got nothing. I've got nothing to give right now. And I would feel so bad because he works so hard for the family and he deserves a nice meal. And even if I wasn't the one cooking it, even if it was like HEB that was pre-seasoning the salmon for me, like let it be that there's food. And like Auntie Mina said, communication about what are we gonna do this week, rather than just being like he's on his own. Um,
Can I
and I
say,
think there's an awareness. Yes.
okay, I just remember one of these days. I had you guys, five of you, then some other kids. My friend brought her kids. So there were like 8 kids plus 3 adults. And I was doing your hair. And I said, oh, lunch is served. They said, what? Lunch? When did you cook lunch? I said, well, multitasking. I discovered, I know a few people have something against microwave, but because I had to make food for the children, my husband was overseas then. I learned to cook stew in microwave.
And it's
So I
delicious.
took a break in between making here. I cut up the meat, put with the micro safe thing, and then finish that. And I put the rice. And so rice and stew. And I still remember they said, wow, this stew is so tasty because so finding ways to do things will help you a lot. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to put that
No,
out.
yeah. Very important. And side note, if you have an immigrant mom or mom from a different culture, get those recipes. I know it's hard because most of the time when they're telling you recipes, they're like salt to taste. Nobody knows what to taste is, but please ask your mom to get those recipes, because my mom, her stew that you can make in the microwave, plantain, beans, all the things that I ate growing up, I was worried that my child would not have any of those things because I didn't know how to make them. But I asked my mom to sit down and write her recipes. So now I can make them. My husband can make my husband makes it better than me. I just have to get over that. But yeah, just taking out the guesswork. And for me, mine is the air fryer. I have a recipe for air fryer chicken that beautiful, made so well every time.
Mhm.
And I can anything that I can do, like she said, multitasking, I can set it and forget it. I can go take a shower while the chicken is cooking. I can there's a fried rice recipe that you can make in the Instapot. I can watch the baby while food is cooking. So I think sometimes we need to let ourselves be released from those shackles of like, there's this new thing about stay-at-home moms making sourdough bread. Number one, I don't really like sourdough bread, but I guess me and Auntie Mina made kombucha for a while. We're very DIY around here, but I think sometimes there's this badge of honor. You had to make it yourself from scratch in
Mm.
order for it to be good. But even okra soup, okra as some people call it, my mom can make okra soup like that. Give her a blender, give her some frozen veggies. She can do a fresh version, but she can do a version where it's like, hey, you have 20 minutes. So I think talking to older and wiser women who can say, hey, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, there are
Mhm.
ways to do this, I think makes it sane for you as a stay-at-home mom. um, Let me see if there's anything else. Yeah, and I think
And
also
also, sorry,
humility. Yeah.
sorry, may
Mhm.
before we leave this safe
Yeah.
haven, part of the safe haven is to make your husband know that he can come home and be safe. The food,
Yeah.
he can come home and there's food. He can come home and there's arrangements to,
Yeah.
I mean, how will I put it? It's not a fight, a tug of war. I mean, it's not a, it's a battle. I call it something. It's not, I'm not, oh, I don't know what she will say this night. I don't know what I'm going home to.
Hmm.
So make it a safe haven where he will rush to come home. Not, oh, I want to go hang out with the boys because I'm not sure what. Of course, sometimes he can hang out, but let the default be to rush home
Yeah.
with his family.
Yeah. I think that's important. We underestimate all that men go through throughout the day. And I just thought of something that's kind of interesting. Submission is a funny concept that the Lord asks for women to submit. And sometimes we're like, what's the man submitting to? If you think about it, men in the workplace know how to follow rules, actually. They know how to have a boss and submit
Mm,
to their boss. They know
yeah.
how to do all those things. But when we come into marriage, we're like, he's not submitting to anyone. Like, actually, your husband is submitted to way more. I mean, hopefully,
Mhm.
submit. He knows how to submit to people in authority. And so I
Mhm.
think even for me, I've had to learn that my husband is doing all that outside. And then he comes in the house. This is the one place that is his domain, that he's
Right.
in charge of all of the
Mm,
things. And so I have to support him and I have to make it easy for him to lead. Not
right.
that I like put my brain to the side, but early on, I'm a reformed feminist. I used to literally have a case that said wild feminist on it. And I got rid of that case like a year before I met my husband. So I still believe in women's rights and things like that. But some of that fighting
Mm,
made me too tough in marriage. And my husband, just, all he wanted was softness from me.
mm, mhm.
And there were times where he just wanted me to yield without a fight. And I was like, I'm smart and I'm independent and I'm capable. And I didn't need to do all that in marriage. And I think just as the safe haven part, what is that verse about? Like, it's better than a nagging wife, that nagging wife
Yeah.
verse.
Better
And
to live in a
with a dripping
leaking
faucet.
roof
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
than.
Than to have a nagging wife.
Mhm.
And it's cool to be right, I guess. But in your marriage doesn't have to be that place where, like, yeah, I got the last word and I have the upper hand. That energy doesn't belong in marriage.
Mhm.
It just, I feel like it adds salt to the pot. It's not helpful. And I'm saying that now as someone who didn't realize I was contributing that to my
Mhm.
marriage. I
Mhm.
didn't realize that there were times where I was trying to like one up my husband or like have the last word because I thought it was funny. Just, I wasn't trying to I wasn't trying to belittle him or anything, but some of that like competitive edge,
Mhm.
when it comes in the form of your wife, it's like it's not really a sweet thing to add to your marriage. So, and as far as a safe haven, if you want it to be safe for your husband to share his thoughts, to be vulnerable, you have to create an environment where there's respect. But
Mhm.
as much as you're taking care of your children, you should be willing to take care of your husband too. And I'll be honest, I was one of those women who, it's so weird. I'm not naturally tender. I'm not. But the Lord was like, you know how to be tender with your son. So there's a tenderness that is there when you're smiling at your sunshine baby. Don't then dim your smile to your husband and be like, that same warmth, your husband deserves that
Yeah.
warmth as well. So I think I don't know. I think we're taught in this world to be so hard towards men. We have to be careful in our own marriages and our own homes to create a soft landing space.
Right.
If he's fought all these wars at work, he shouldn't come and be fighting at the house as well.
Um,
Yeah. Um, Anything to say about that, Auntie Mina, as I'm looking for something
no,
to look
you
up?
said it. Oh,
Okay. So I want to refer to the book. It has some really cool steps here. It says on page 100, in summary, to make your home a safe place for your family in times where there will be storms raging in their lives, you can consider the following steps. Number one, give unconditional love. Um, I heard on her podcast, this was really cool. The lady was saying that she had to pray that the Lord would help her to have good thoughts towards her husband, that she wouldn't be criticizing him, she wouldn't be looking for faults in him all the time, but that the Lord would let her mind think well of her husband. Because she was saying when she didn't get her thoughts in alignment, she found that her treatment of her husband followed the thoughts.
Of
So if she
course.
was like, "Oh, he never does this," she would start treating him as someone who never did those things. And so
Mm,
she said she had to really watch her mind so that she didn't start viewing her husband in a certain way and treating him in light of that. So I thought
mm,
that was very helpful.
yeah.
Yeah, that unconditional love, giving that. Number two, accepting and supporting.
Mm,
Um, being your husband or your wife's cheerleader, that is such a big deal. It's so funny. Everyone likes support in a certain way. So my husband just texted me some good news that he had, and I was like, "Oh wow, that's awesome!" And then I remember who my husband was. I was like, "Ooh, he needs a little bit more celebration." And so then I sent a new emoji, and it was like the phone going, pew, pew, yeah, yeah. My inclination was, that's amazing. But I knew in that moment he needed a little bit more like rah, rah. So
yeah.
accept support, give support in the
Yeah.
language that your spouse will get it,
Yes.
wants to receive it. Number three, it says lend an ear, um, the power of listening. Yeah, and it should be that it's two-way. It's not that you're venting to your spouse all the time. And I think something that I've heard people say is that when you're listening, don't listen to respond, listen to hear what they're really
Yeah.
going through, and,
Yeah.
be there for them when you're lending an ear. And sometimes this is something me and my sister do. If she's like, "Hey, I just want to vent," or "Hey, I'm asking you this thing and I do want some feedback." So there's a difference if you're listening to help solve a problem or if
Mm,
you're just wanting to let someone let off some steam. Husbands are notorious for trying to give advice when sometimes we just need you to listen.
yeah.
So know what kind of lending of an ear you're doing. And then lastly, it says trust and respect, that they go hand in hand. um, we should be able to create a space where our spouse can come to us without hesitation or fear of judgment. So, um, yeah, when you make a space that your spouse can say anything, and,
Mm,
and I'll tell on myself one more time and I'll hand it over to Auntie Mina for any closing thoughts. But my husband recently, I'm telling on myself, recently told me there are times where he wants to say things to me, but he knows I'll be defensive about it. So he hesitates to say it to me. So that shows me in those moments, I didn't create a space that was safe for him to share those thoughts. Um, and the Lord is so gracious that people say that marriage is a mirror and it's a sanctification place. And the Lord is so kind. He doesn't make you be sanctified on a stage. He lets the sanctification happen behind closed doors. And as painful and as ugly as it is, nobody is really witnessing it but your spouse. And it's happening for them. They're being sanctified and you're being sanctified. But the Lord is gracious that it's a private act,
mm,
And so for me, the Lord's been telling me, like, isn't this the place? If you're gonna mess up here so that this person can lovingly correct you rather
mhm.
than being like, I'm perfect, and going out there and making mistakes out there and people who are unkind being the ones to correct you. So I'm trying to not come from a place of being defensive when my husband's just trying to lovingly tweak something that he's seeing because he's the closest one to me.
Mhm.
And it can be so easy to surround yourself with people who love you, but you don't get called out because they don't see all your ugly stuff. So anyway, those are my thoughts about safe havens. Auntie Mina, anything?
One of the things we said in our book is allowing yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
So no one is perfect. Sometimes we just expect our spouses to be perfect. But if we turn the mirror on ourselves, we'll see so much that he is having to deal with without
Yeah.
complaining. And so one of the things that helped me was, the Bible says, as much as lies within you, be at peace with all men.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be at peace with all other men. And when it comes to your inside. He said, no, I can't take that. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is the only place I can be myself.
Yeah.
But no, we still expected to be at peace with all men. In our
Mm,
marriage, 40 something years, even up to the, when my husband is quiet and not talk, usually in the kitchen, we're always talking. And when he's not happy, we'll just be there doing stuff, doing stuff. I say, are we okay? Something wrong? A penny for your. I said, no, I'm fine. Something had happened. And I will look back at the good things that we always talked. Okay, tell me. But promise
mm,
telling me will not result into defense.
mm,
I try to explain.
yeah.
It every time we try to explain, it's becomes something. So being at peace with all men is listening without trying to building up your defense, how you respond in defense. Just listen.
Mm,
And if we
mm,
have to say we're sorry, we're sorry. The important thing is peace in the home.
yeah.
Do we want to sacrifice that peace at the altar of our ego? No. We want to maintain peace because, for one thing, you want him to be able to pray because when you have odds, you can't pray and be the head of the house.
It's true.
So well, I'm not putting all of this on women, but our own part is there. So,
Yeah. That's wisdom. That's wisdom, especially that part of that he's supposed to lead. And I was thinking about that the other day, and I was saying, I would hate to be the breach, you
mm,
know, in the marriage because, my husband's living his life and I come and do something to him. And now it's like, oh, he can't even pray. He can't even cover because now I'm bringing something. And so I think it's true. No one is perfect. But I think those moments where we start to see a pattern of something that we're not quite doing. We ask the Holy Spirit to help us,
yeah,
but we also let our spouse help us, because I
yes,
think sometimes we're like, oh, we're just going to figure it out by ourselves, but the Lord's given us this partner. I always say this, that my dad and my husband are very similar. My husband is also a quiet, and he's talks to a lot of people, right? But at home, he's safe, so he's quiet. He's like, he's a very chill guy. But when he stops talking, I then, you're like you said, have to do the replay in my mind, and like little things is like, oh, did I insult him, or did I say something harshly when I could have said it kinder, and so it's like, not that you're walking on eggshells, but you're trying to be at peace with all men. You're trying to do what right by him, do well by him all the days of his life. And I hopefully you have a spouse who's trying to do the same, and
yeah,
that peace,
mm,
you think that the peace is just for you, but the peace is also for everyone who comes under your
right.
doorstep, to your house. And I have had people say like, wow, there's such a peace that comes, when I came to your house, I felt such peace, or I felt like the
Mm,
presence of God there. And that's something that only happens when a couple is unified in their desire to come to the Lord as like one. And so when we think about all the petty things, yes, you could be right,
mm,
or could you be unified? How can two go together if they don't first
mm,
agree? You don't have to agree with everything, but you can agree that, okay. We always say when we have a fight, we're like, Team Irby, okay. And that's
that's
like our reset, where
okay.
when tensions are a little rough, like, okay, we
That's
still love
good.
each other, we're still on the same team. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that I have to agree with what you're saying. It's just that,
Mm,
like, it's not important enough for us to have now a breach in our communication.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm learning a lot, but all of this came from the stay-at-home mom life. And I want Auntie Mina to end with an encouragement to that woman who is a stay-at-home wife slash mom. Maybe her career is on hold. Maybe she's outnumbered by children. Maybe she had hopes and dreams for herself that look different than her reality. What would you say to that woman?
I would say look at your current, whatever you're doing currently, as God ordained.
Hmm.
God puts you there right now to do what you are doing. And there's time. I got my nursing degree at 50 years old. And after the twins were ready to be by themselves. So, and yet, guess what? I retired before my friends that have been working. I retired with benefits. And so I looked at it, I said, what did I lose?
Yeah.
I didn't lose anything. Well, maybe I lost a few years of earning, but my career wise, I did not lose anything. So you still have time. You are just shifting that career for something while the kids were growing up. Remember, you can always go back to a career, but the children, if we miss that band, those years, we have missed them. Because when they grow up by themselves, taking care of themselves, learning things on their own, coming home and cooking their own meal and doing all those things, when they leave, they've left. They can never regain that period. That's why I'm just encouraging women to find some other outlet for their brain things. Get involved. Thank God today there are online courses. You can begin to amass, I say amass, get degrees. You don't even have to get degrees, certificates, or
Hmm.
just knowledge that you will use when the kids are grown. They may not be useful right now. I got journalism postgraduate diploma when I knew I would never be able to use it. But now I'm using my journalism in my writing.
Mm, sure.
So don't stay and say, oh, it's only the children, and deny yourself the chance of improving yourself. Another thing my husband said, I'm investing in you so my children would benefit from your intelligence and your skills. And truly, because he got invested in me computer wise, all the kids knew computer stuff before. I won't say before their parents, but they knew it early
Hmm.
and developed because their mom was computer literate. Their mom was a journalist, not practicing journalist. Their mom was, I tried all kinds of things. So
Hmm.
just look at it as you investing in your children. And what kind of thing are you offering them? Are you offering them your tired self that they can learn from? So if you look at that way, I'm sure it will help in accepting your current situation.
That's good. Very, very nice. When you were saying that, I was thinking about, I think there's a page I follow called Every Woman a Theologian. And it's just talking about like, you might not be a pastor, but
Mhm.
you can still be a theologian. As a mom, you can be
Yes.
giving your children scripture.
Mhm.
And, you know, my baby being 9 months old, he has posters that have like the armor of God, the Beatitudes, stuff that's like you said, when you invest in your knowledge and you pour it into your children, now your children have access to all of these other things.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think that's super helpful. I was going to say one other thing. Oh, and then she also said like investing in yourself. Someone mentioned that if you are a creative person that doesn't have an outlet, your family is probably miserable because you're taking all of that energy that you could be using to create something and you're creating problems. You're probably creating all a cloud of things that are not necessary where you could be pouring that into some kind of creative pursuit. And I can attest that I am trying to find a hobby for myself that makes sense because I have all of this creative energy. And sometimes I'm like my mom and I design things, I make YouTube videos because I have all of these ideas. But yeah, if you haven't yet found a hobby or something to pour your energy into, please find one for your sanity and for the sake of your family. They will benefit from that.
And
Okay.
I also, sorry, in my women's group, I'm encouraging women right from since in the 90s. I started blog,
Mhm.
not for money. Don't look at it as money, monetization. No, it's every woman has something to share. Even start talking about yourself. Start talking about some interest. It's an outlet. Like Timmy said, have an outlet. It doesn't have to make you money. Start a blog. Start a YouTube channel for only you. You don't have to have um, what subscribers, but
Hmm.
it's where you're letting out things. It's free. This is the
Yeah.
best time. I just kept saying, "Oh, I wish this were all available when I was just a stay-at-home mom." No, when I was a stay-at-home mom, not just a
Hmm.
stay-at-home mom. But you have so many things that you can do. If you need help, I help people start. I can build you a 5-page blog free. So if you need help, contact me and I'll get you started.
Yes. Yeah, this is a good time to plug because both Auntie Mina and I are coaches, and so that this is what we do. Um, we actually started the Pivot Strategists together. We are co-founders, and so whenever people are trying to pivot into new seasons of life, we help them navigate it. My corner of the market is early professionals to mid professionals, and Auntie Mina has everybody else, mid professionals, retirees, everybody in between, because whenever you're navigating these things and you're trying to find what is your outlet or what is the thing that you're going to do, you sometimes need some support. So I'll put our information below. You can reach out to us for a coaching call if you need one. Auntie Mina does have some pro bono things that she offers, but also some paid services. Um, she really invested in herself. So I'm convinced that there's nothing that Auntie Mina can't do. She can build websites. She's written books. She can create a course from scratch. She made a children's book that had my son on it in a cartoonized. She did AI before anyone in our family. Okay, so I'm really proud of my mom, and I think it gives us a lot of hope. And I wanted to introduce you to her story because when you become a stay at home mom, it's not your whole personality, it's not your whole identity, it's a sliver of your life.
Right.
That might seem so big, but in the grand scheme of things, God has so many other things for you to do
Yeah.
in addition to being a mother. And so I just have to applaud Auntie Mina because she
Thank you.
really is an example of enjoying motherhood and not putting your own growth and development on hold. And for us as kids, we were inspired because we were never like, oh, she's just a mom. We never thought moms don't do things. We always thought actually moms are a lot of fun. They randomly take you on a bus ride across London to go to different places. And sometimes they're like, hey, kids, I want to try something new. Moms are really random and really fun. So that was the motherhood model that I shifted into when I had my son. And I'm really excited for how our family will grow. But I do think that the enemy has been attacking mothers, professional women who became mothers, to let them feel like, oh, this is it. But it's not, as you can
Mm.
see and you can hear. So
Thank you.
thank you, Auntie Mina, for being
Thank you.
with us today. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. Please check out the playlist of all the different episodes. We're going to keep going. We probably have a couple more episodes to wrap up. And then we want to do something big at the end when we finish to celebrate. So stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much for joining. God
Bye.
bless.
God bless you.